This episode is brought to you in part by Hindsight. Hindsight is a new science fiction novel by author Matthew Keegan. Hindsight is a time travel adventure that Tim Truax at the Nerd Room calls a brilliant tapestry of time travel and history that will leave you questioning everything. Impossible to put down. Find the links to Hindsight at talkstarwars.co.uk/hindsight and order your copy today. This episode is also brought to you by the Talk Star Wars Patreon community. If you'd like to support what we do now and help us expand our programming, head to patreon.com/talkstarwars and become a patron. In return, you'll get an exclusive daily podcast, a monthly newsletter, Facebook Live sessions, priority release podcasts, and monthly prize giveaways and a whole lot more. You'll also get access to our VIP-only Facebook group. This group contains a global community of Star Wars fans that have become dear friends. So head to patreon.com/talkstarwars today and become a TSW patron. This is Talk Star Wars, the official podcast of talkstarwars.co.uk. Hello everyone, welcome back to Talk Star Wars. I'm Mark.
And I'm Rob.
And Paul will hopefully be joining us a little bit later on for episode 105, D4. Only one more of these interminable titles. Only
if I don't think of any before episode 107.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what might happen there? All right, well, we've got a pretty packed show this evening. Lots of listener bits and pieces to get to. So I think we should just jump straight in to things. Rob, how do you feel about that?
Fine.
Let's just get into it then. So before we get started, we're going to throw out some thank yous. So a big thank you to Adam Rawson and Rahil Jr. for liking the Facebook page this week. And thank you to Adam Marks and to Matt Parks and to Jared Peppard for the additional support this month.
Cheers.
This is these gents have gone out of their way this month to help us out. So there's been an upscaling of their Patreon pledges. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Jared took advantage of the tip jar option on the site. So thank you for that, Jared. It's very much appreciated.
Lovely.
There's been lots of kind words of love and support and encouragement as well surrounding us since our poorly week a couple of weeks ago. So
a couple of people said they were Team Rob. That's nice.
Yeah, I know. I saw Skoldran's lovely, glowing email.
Very sweet. Very sweet.
Very kind bunch of people. What wonderful, supportive people we've managed to surround ourselves with.
Yeah. To be clear, I was only half joking. I wasn't completely serious. I'm not having some sort of episode, purely just one of those things I like to joke about.
Well, there's a different kind of episode you're having.
Well, this is true. This is true.
Also, over on YouTube, we want to thank Fox and Mace Windu, not that one, for the YouTube subscriptions as well.
All right, well,
along with everybody else that's jumped onto YouTube as well in the past week. As always, your details are hidden from me, otherwise you would get a personal thank you. So thank you anyway. And then we can get into a couple of comments off of recent YouTube videos. Apologies, by the way, I managed to make a slight error loading this week's main show to YouTube. So it was a couple of days late publishing. I didn't even notice. I thought it'd been quiet in terms of comments.
Yeah.
That's because I made an error in the publishing. So,
error.
You live and learn.
Yes, indeed.
All right, this is a comment from Autobahn Kenobi. He says, I always thought that Luke didn't go in person to Crate because he didn't want to kill his nephew in front of his mother, or at all. He already felt guilty enough for losing him to Snoke and having that fleeting thought about killing him. He showed compassion by using the doppelganger projection. Very Jedi. Good point. Very, very insightful point. Rob, would you like to take Vasuvi's comment from YouTube this week?
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I just had to cough, but I muted it. Professional. Aunt Vasuvi asks, I was wondering where you were. Many thanks to Marks, Rob and Paul. Rest in peace, Alison Shermer, and deepest condolences to all who knew and loved her. Following your discussion on the matter, I just checked the BBFC website and still no mention of the trailer for Solo, a Star Wars story, as of the 31st of January. And the current global box office earnings for The Last Jedi is listed at $1.3122 billion, number 9 of all time. Controversy notwithstanding, not too shabby. Also, for those interested in planning their purchases, Target has put up their DVD/Blu-ray/4K pre-order pages for The Last Jedi, still with no official release date. The Target exclusive release will include a 40-page gallery book. I agree with Mark that Reed Morano seems more suited to direct a live-action Star Wars series rather than a cinematic offering. The Handmaid's Tale was stellar. She only directed the first 3 of the 10 episodes from season 1. The tone she set was pitch perfect. Wow, that
price.
Pitch perfect. That seems jarring for period drama. Oh, I see.
That's why he's on the show, ladies and gentlemen. What Vesuvi's pointed out there is the conversation we'd had about Reed Morano possibly being lined up as a director on a Star Wars project.
Yes.
And the Facebook Live session we had this evening, we were kicking around ideas for a live action, because it looks like there's going to be a new live action and animated TV show in production at the same time. So we've been kicking around ideas of what they might be, and the more and more I think about it, the more I think Reed Morano is the perfect fit for a live action TV show.
All right.
Seems to be most of the people in the group want to see something Empire based for a TV series, so I think that could be really very interesting. Complex, dark, could be really cool. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to publish that Facebook Live session. So if you're listening to this on Monday, I imagine it'll probably hit on Tuesday, because our schedule's pretty open on Tuesday. Thank you, Autobahn Kenobi and Aunt Vesuvi, for your comments. It brings us up to our review sections. Don't forget you can take advantage of our Ron Burgundy policy, which means whatever you write in a 5-star review, we'll read verbatim. So if you want to promote your podcast or your blog, that's where to do it. There's only one rule, and that's keep it clean.
Or drop me and or Paul in it.
Yes, that happens from time to time, but only when I need to save my own skin. So you can understand the motivations.
That's nice.
This week in the show notes, I've put that link you sent me to good use, Rob. That you gave me some code, right? From the service you utilise to aggregate all of our reviews. There is now an unlinked page on talkstarwars.co.uk. If you go to talkstarwars.co.uk/reviews, you will see the last 3 reviews posted into Apple Podcasts on that page.
Marvelous.
If you download the show notes and you go to the review section, click on the word reviews, and it will take you straight there.
Oh yeah, I see it.
And then you can see that's where I grabbed this week's review from. Which would you like to take that, Rob? Because I seem to be doing all the talking.
By all means.
It's very
so this is from Derek in Denver, Colorado, and Derek has very kindly given us a 5-star review with the headline "Entertaining Program." So love the discussions on this program. Not too hot, never cold, boring, and always enjoyable. It's nice to listen to people intelligently express themselves and even disagree sometimes in a civil and gentlemanly manner. He's put gentlemanly in quotes. I'm not sure if that means anything. Probably not. Who knows? Who's to say?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's something to do with us being Brits and everything we do. That's the way I'm going to choose to. I'm going to choose to write that. Pip pip. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into listener comms, and we're going to kick this off with a voicemail this week. So if you want to get your voicemails onto the show, then send your questions, comments to us via Twitter or Facebook. Send us email and the aforementioned voicemail to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com, and we will play your voicemail into the show, as we're going to do this week with Matthew Salvatore's voicemail, which sounds a little something like this.
Hey, what's up, Talk Star Wars? It's Matthew Salvatore here. I thought I'd just send you this voicemail in and give you my thoughts about Star Wars. So, for me, I have always been a fan. I think I can remember my parents bought me my first Lego TIE Fighter when I was really young, and I just been a Star Wars fan ever since. I can remember my uncle taking me to go see the Revenge of the Sith in theaters, which was fantastic. I actually like the prequels. So lately, I guess maybe after the Clone Wars ended, I kind of took a step back as a fan and really wasn't the super fan that I used to be. I used to be obsessed with the Clone Wars and everything Star Wars. But so I kind of took a step back, and The Force Awakens came out, and it was good, but it never really kind of like revitalized my fandom. if that makes any sense. And so much so that when Rogue One came out, I didn't even go see it in theaters, which was crazy. So me and my brother rented it when it came out. We watched it, and of course we loved it. But again, it didn't really recharge my fandom, which is strange because I love Rogue One now. But then the Last Jedi came, and so I was on Twitter the day before the movie came out, or the fan screening for the movie, which for us was Thursday. But so I was reading my friend's spoiler-free reaction on Twitter, and some idiot posted a spoiler in response to him, and it was, what about Kylo killing Snoke and Luke? And
dude, that's not cool.
The moment I read that, I didn't know if it was true. So I just had this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, and that one little comment kind of just recharged me. So the next day I grabbed my brother and my father, and we went to go see The Last Jedi. And so we were at the fan screening, and of course the energy was amazing. Everybody was dressed up as Jedi and Sith and stormtroopers, and it was fantastic. And so I saw The Last Jedi. I don't want to say I hated it, because I don't. I was very mixed as the credits rolled.
A lot of people were, mate.
I wasn't charged with my fandom either. I kind of just was meh. And so, like an idiot, I went to Twitter to see what people were thinking about it. And of course, if anyone knows about social media, which I was stupid enough to walk into, it's a wretched gathering of scum and villainy, and people were lambasting it and just attacking it. And I had some grievances, but mine was not kill it with fire by any means. So I decided to look for a podcast that really kind of encapsulated kind of a good review of the movie and just kind of talked about it. And so, of course, I searched, and I found Talk Star Wars. And,
Sorry.
Everything changed after that. I don't know what it was, but as I was just sitting there listening to you guys talk about it and just really be enthusiastic, and just the way you treat the source material and Star Wars, it recharged me in a way that I haven't, and none of the movies ever did. And just listening to you guys talk about Star Wars made me realize why I was a fan all those years ago. And now I feel like I'm a super Star Wars fan again, and I don't owe that to the movies. I owe that all to you, Talk Star Wars.
Wow, that's amazing.
You guys have definitely helped me. Mark, you guys, Rob, you guys are fantastic. Paul, Jaws.
Oh, damn it! I was going to say, suck it, Paul.
I love hearing about it. I love the banter, and I certainly love the little jabs at the prequels. Even though I love the prequels, but I can totally understand where people are coming from. But I really, really thank you guys, just from the bottom down, how much your podcast has kind of recharged me. And I've always wanted to get back to Star Wars, and the movies never did it for me. And I tried it with the Rebel show, but I want to get back to that too. So I'm really back. I've been ordering Star Wars Legos up the yin yang. So my wallet is hurting, but my heart is full. So I just wanted to call in and just really thank you guys for helping out a Star Wars fan. So good luck, and may the Force be with you guys. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow, Matthew.
Wow.
What can we say? That is high praise indeed. What a wonderful voicemail to get. What the movies have failed to do, we seem to have managed to pick up the slack. So,
just saying.
I am absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much for that really thoughtful message, Matthew. Very, very touched indeed. We're not prequel haters. I know he sort of gave us a bit of a free pass there for some of the teasing we do to prequels, but we're not prequel haters here, are we, Rob?
No, Revenge of the Sith's in my top half, at the very least. It's almost, I think it's probably second or third.
Yeah. Yeah, so even, it's not, we don't really hate any of them, do we? We're just varying degrees of love and like 1 degree of like down the bottom there for that for that clones thing. But that's what I mean about this harmless ribbing. But Matthew, thank you so much for a wonderful message.
Really, that's
I'm glad
very
that
kind.
your fandom passion has been reignited, and now you're in with the right group of people here to celebrate that. So go and get those audio commentaries downloaded, Matthew.
Hello there.
And listen to us as we walk through the movies with you. It'd be awesome. Great stuff. All right, we've got another voicemail to come up in just a second, but let's get to Jaden's email for this week. So Jaden, in inverted commas, because remember, secret identity. I think it might be Ryan Johnson. He says,
I believe it.
Hey guys, do you think that Disney would eventually use their streaming service to produce a mature Star Wars live action show, considering that Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, etc. all make original content that pushes the boundaries of what you can do on traditional television, including comic book properties and even Star Trek? Could you see Disney following that trend? Perhaps have an animated show for kids and a mature live action for more adult audiences. And would you want this? Keep up the great work, Jaden. So, mature live action show. What have we just been talking about, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, mature live action show. I don't know. I feel like I don't see it happening personally.
Right.
I can see something going more mature, skewing for sort of young adults, sort of late teens, that sort of thing. I can't see them going kind of Punisher style far down that road. I can see, there is, Star Wars is a broad church, and clearly, as I've discussed in previous episodes, some of the fandom really kind of makes that statement very true. But I do think that a young adult, kind of late teens, early adult piece would be perfectly welcome. I really think that's as far as it will go. Yes.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there. Are you watching Discovery, Rob?
No, I haven't got Netflix.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is the problem as I see it, and I do think I'll qualify this by saying I do think Jaden's onto something here. I do think that there will be 2 types of show in production simultaneously. I think there'll be the Filoni-esque family show, animated, and I think there will be something that is designed to be consumed perhaps by older audiences, but in the same way as the later Star Wars films to be released have all been in the UK 12A. So not like the U access that the original trilogy was in the UK, so it's a more targeted audience. But I don't see it going mature, in inverted commas, as we would imagine mature, in inverted commas, to mean. And by that I mean Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery has managed to do with this new series some stuff that would never have been dreamt of previously, which is to have some complex sexual content and some serious language. They dropped the F-bomb a few times.
Yes, I've heard this, yeah.
Now that, to me, obviously we do the After Dark, so we're very liberal and broad-minded. So none of that stuff bothers me in isolation. But when it's dropped into a show like Star Trek, it calls attention to itself big time.
It jars.
It very much so. And like you just said about the Punisher, that there's violence and sexual content and language in that show and
it fits with the theme. Yeah,
it fits. But if you try and take that out and put that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they're bedfellows, right? They're in the same universe.
Sure.
It would really call attention to itself. So I think that they will do a show that's aimed upwards to the demographic, the existing demographic, but I don't think they're going to break the structure of Star Wars too much by going a little bit too far with the adult content. We were talking earlier in the Facebook Live group about potentially bringing in a couple of shows to the circulation now with the Disney streaming service. One kids and one live action. Oh, excuse me, one animated and one live action.
Right.
I just wanted to, as a quick add-on to Jaden's question here, Rob, what would you like to see in terms of a live action show?
I still would really like the Old Republic era to be what they'd explore. I mean, when you've got Jedi, thousands of Jedi and thousands of Sith just going at it constantly. I want something like that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
More so than I'm not necessarily convinced that I'd want something like a House of Cards, more political intrigue and stuff. Because I mean, that's the stuff about the prequels that I'm less keen on.
Yes,
I'm more into this sort of the sort of action-packed stuff and the swashbuckling, space piracy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it might be that they might be drawing a little bit too much fire if they were to go down the political route again, because it didn't really survive that previously when the prequels did it. So I'd be concerned about them going too far down that route. But yeah, the more Star Warsy, the better, really, for me. All right, okay, that's great stuff. Thank you, Jaden. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think they will. Personally, I think they will do something that aims up the demo, but I don't think they're going to be going too wild with it and too Star Trek Discovery, because that's a little bit too edgy. All right, that squeak you just heard from Rob is we've just been joined by our dear friend and
our deal
friend.
DILF. Yeah.
Yes.
Dilf. Carlos Candido.
How's it going, boys?
Hey, my man. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well.
Good. Welcome on. Thanks for stepping in.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Anytime I have time during this during your recording hour, I'm able to come in and talk Star Wars.
Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Excellent. Well, we've just been wrapping up some TV talk, and I think we're gonna get one more written listener message in, and we're gonna go back to a voicemail. So, Rob, did you want to take Nathan's email?
Yeah, sure. So this is from Nathan Griff, and Nathan writes, "Hi, Talk Star Wars crew." That's you, Carlos, today as well.
Yes, it is.
I found your podcast near the end of 2017 and have thoroughly enjoyed it since. I appreciate each of your interesting, reasoned opinions on Star Wars, and especially your respect for one another's opposing viewpoints and the different viewpoints of your listeners. Plus, the humour you each bring makes the show lots of fun. I've loved Rey's character since TFA, and TLJ has cemented her as my favourite Star Wars character, just above Luke and Ahsoka. One of the many things that I find interesting about her is how she seems to use her anger when she fights. In Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku appraises Anakin's Force skills by saying, "You have hate, you have anger, but you don't use them." I don't think he would make the same statement about Rey, at least not about her anger. You can clearly see her rage on display in the forest battle at the end of TFA, and even before that on Jakku, when her first instinct after hearing that Finn stole Poe's jacket is to chase Finn down and smack him with her staff. We're fighting alongside Kylo in Snoke's throne room, and in her fight with Luke, she clearly shows anger and rage. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Do you think this trait in Rey is meant to show that she really is the inverse of Kylo, mostly light with a trace of dark instead of the opposite? Or in the same way that Kylo is conflicted by the light but never truly embraces it, is Rey his equal in the light, able to interact with the dark side but always incorruptible? Is her battle rage a trait that comes from her experience growing up on Jakku, and one that will lessen as she learns to use the Force? Or am I reading too much into this, and it's simply a way for the filmmakers to add dramatic tension to Rey's fight scenes? My apologies if this has been discussed on your show already. Thanks for your time, and may the Force be with you all. Nathan Griff.
Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. Well done, Rob.
Yeah.
I think there's room for this. Have we discussed it? We have discussed Rey's dark side previously, haven't we? But there's always room to cover this ground again, especially when we've got new people joining us all the time. So let's kick this around then, chaps. Is the anger we see in Rey in both films intentional? Let's tackle that point first. Carlos, as guest of honor.
I believe, as for a story writer, you have to show that she isn't infallible. So I think she's definitely not incorruptible. Just as Luke was not incorruptible per se. When he let the dark side take over, or he didn't listen to Yoda and took his weapons down to the cave on Dagobah. Mm-hmm. And there's, you have to let children, as a father, you let your children, you give them some leash. Now, maybe the light side is the leash that these main characters are given, but they have room to roam and get close to that line. And it's 100% intentional. You have to write that in as part of your character, or else there's absolutely no depth in the characters.
Yeah, good point. I like it. Rob?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is one of those things I've talked about before, that Last Jedi they gave Rey way more depth than Force Awakens, and she was much better and much more compelling for it. I found myself really invested in what she was about in Last Jedi, whereas with Force Awakens I didn't really get that connection.
100% agree.
Yeah, so I think it's a storytelling device to it allows us to kind of speculate a little in our heads on whether or not she's going to be, if she's going to stay the light side, or is she going to kind of flirt with the darkness. I mean, I've talked about how I would have liked to see Last Jedi end with them sort of shaking hands and moving on for, episode 9 is their kind of odd couple running of trying to organize the galaxy. I would have liked to see a bit of that in episode 9 and see episode 8 end with that kind of uncertainty, because that would have made for a really interesting 18 months, if nothing else.
Yeah, tense 18
like
months.
A Laurel and Hardy.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Maybe not quite that broad.
Yeah,
no.
They replaced J.J. Abrams with the Farrelly brothers, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yeah,
maybe that was what we were going to get from Lord and Miller.
Maybe, yeah.
I like your points of view there, chaps. I think that it does fit neatly into the Star Wars framework. The lessons we've been taught, the things that we've seen when we've seen Luke turn up dressed in black, choking people, and then being quick to anger on DS2. We've learnt these rules that a Jedi, when they show anger, it's usually a bad sign. So seeing Rey being quick to anger and seeing the way she reacts in Snoke's throne room, it tells us something, doesn't it? It tells us how to feel about Rey in that moment. You want to see her take names, but you also want her to be very careful because she's right at the edge of something. We've learnt these lessons from Star Wars. We've been taught how to think. So I do like that. So second point of Nathan's question, is Rey incorruptible and so safe from the dark side? Do you think that she's bulletproof?
I think at this stage, yes. I think if they were going to kind of flirt with her, kind of darkness, they would have done it by now in more depth. I feel like now, not to say they can't do it at all, but I feel like anything they do is going to feel a little rushed.
Right. Okay. It might. Yeah. I mean, she's dodged the Kylo-shaped bullet, but that doesn't mean that we won't fear for the decisions she makes as she re-establishes this order, right?
I suppose
that could be a new threat, is seeing her follow Anakin's path.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, she's got nobody to kind of guide her, so she may have to do some of it. I don't know how they're going to handle it. They may have her kind of guided by Force ghosts, or they may have her kind of doing a bit for herself and sort of bumbling along.
Well, I do hear that sisters are doing it for themselves, and
I've
has
heard
been
this.
the way for a couple of decades.
Yeah, standing on their own 2 feet. And I forget how the rest goes.
We don't have the license for it, so don't quote too much of it.
I can't remember the rest anyway.
Carlos, is Rey bulletproof, or should we fear for her safety?
I come back to my first point. It's the yo-yo thing. Like, she's on that string. How far can she go? If I could take it back to Revenge of the Sith, we look at Anakin and his struggle with his dreams about Padme dying in childbirth, and he sits on that space couch and he tells her, "I'm not going to let that happen to you." And you could see him wanting to turn to the dark side. And the way he points his finger at Padme, it has that Darth Vader mannerism. Mm-hmm. But then when he's face to face with the Emperor and he discovers that he's actually Darth Sidious, he wants to be good. He makes the right decision. He tells Master Windu. It's like, so he's still on that string. His decision was not made yet. So I think that's that's the beauty of the pen. That's where you can write a beautiful story, or you can write a dog. And I think JJ has a lot of string with Ray. I think we'll forgive Ray a lot more than we could have ever forgiven Kylo, or I mean, people don't forgive Luke for evolving over 30 years. So
yeah, there's a lot.
So
of that.
So I think Ray is gonna have the benefit of the doubt, but I mean, ultimately, she won't cross over that line.
Well, that's the next and final point, really, from Nathan as well. Here, isn't it? Will Ray be forced to control this rage? In as much as it won't necessarily be a choice by her, is there going to be something, do you think, in this movie, in episode 9, that puts her in a position where she can't afford to lose control?
Well, look, the reason why the rebellion exists is because Kylo's unable to control his rage.
Mm-hmm.
So, will she be forced to? No, I think it's one of the lessons that I think it was cut out of the movie, but that third lesson about going to protect the caretakers, I'm not sure if we've hit on this so far in this episode, but there was a third lesson there, and we might get a sneak peek of a Force Ghost Luke in episode 9, reiterating that third lesson about every action that you take is going to cause an equal or opposite reaction. So you have to be able to control your emotions. That's what a Jedi is.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything. I really.
I'll just go then, if that's.
No.
You've converted everybody. Coming up here with your bulletproof common sense.
I know. I can't compete, and this is unusual for me. They may go down that route. Maybe kind of make it clear that, I suppose they could, rather than having her flirt with the dark side, they could have it kind of clear that she's in conflict, not, being in a situation where she can't use it, and she really, really could do with doing so, and she has to rise above, the John Cena style. Hopefully not in the outfit and the with all the sort of hand gestures and stuff, but just be a bit jarring in the Star Wars movie,
a bit jarring. So I couldn't resist the pun. Yeah, it's
I do see that, Carlos.
One thing's for sure. I think we came out of The Force Awakens with a much clearer idea of. Or, they weren't accurate, but we had many more options for Rey coming out of TFA than we have done coming out of The Last Jedi. I think Ryan kind of wrapped everything up so neatly. It's almost like he's swaddled the Star Wars story. So that now you look at Rey and you think, where can she go? What can she do? She's got no real assets, has she? Unless she retains that relationship with Luke through the Force. Maybe Obi-Wan, maybe Yoda, and who knows what else might befall her in terms of Force ghosts. Snoke isn't a Sith, so has he managed to survive death in some form, and will she be able to resist these temptations that are laid before her? But I do think that this darkness that's ingrained in her, this quickness to anger, that there are these elements in there that are going to be very interesting. Whatever she does next in this story is going to be very interesting to see whether they fold that in, and this is a new direction for these Force-sensitive characters, or whether they slowly allow that to sort of fall away from her, and she becomes more like Luke, or more like the Luke we imagine between Jedi and The Force Awakens, this very traditional, white-robed, altruistic Jedi Knight.
I do think that I'm kind of somewhat with you in the idea that they've not got many places to go because they've kind of tied everything off. But actually, it's weird because it's almost simultaneously that's the case and that's not the case, because he's kind of closed off all the threads from TFA, but at the same time, JJ can do pretty much whatever he wants in terms of how they go forwards.
Yeah.
I've said about how I felt. I remember when I reacted to it, I felt like they hadn't told Ryan Johnson that he was doing episode 8 and there was another film to come, because he almost kind of tied it off with a certain finality. And it's that whole ending was very, last film, looking out to what's next, end of a trilogy, kind of had that kind of vibe to it to me. But JJ has infinite amounts of freedom now in where he goes next. He can time jump, he can pick up immediately afterwards. Probably won't, but he could. There's nothing to stop him from doing that. It could be another sort of high tense chase kind of vibe, or it could be some sort of strategic thing like the god awful 300 sequel. That sort of thing.
301.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We found another one that's called. But yeah, they've got simultaneously nowhere to go and everywhere to go. That's for me. That's the beauty of what Ryan Johnson did. I'm not gonna go through the whole spiel of how I feel about the movie and what I just think that the possibilities are endless at this point, because as you said, exactly as you said, he can time jump. He could pick up from maybe a 2-month or a 3-month, little jump off point. Where's the best story? That's It's like a sculptor that finds a big piece of marble and he's like, okay, I'm not going to carve something out of this marble. I'm just going to take away the marble that doesn't have to be there. Mm-hmm. So when you're writing a story, it's the same thing. I can go 10 years, I can go 30 years, I can go 2 months. Where is the best story? And that's where you have to just take away the crap per se, and just get that chunk of meat that you find agreeable, and then you go in with the deep cut and you find that perfect story. It's an unenviable task, because it's Star Wars, first of all. So already there's gonna be lines drawn. You're never gonna make everyone happy, as we've seen clearly. Yeah. So it's an unenviable task, but I think the reward is gigantic, because if you do something that is unexpected yet pleasing to fans, he'll be George. He'll be forever in the hall. He'll be Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's too much about The Force Awakens. Too much of the criticisms leveled at The Force Awakens was about the lack of originality, right? And then you got this other backlash for The Last Jedi, where it's perhaps a little bit too far the other way. But somewhere in there is the mid ground for. I think we're all primed now to expect something different, something unusual from Episode 9, because we've already been taught how to accept it with Last Jedi. So we're learning new skill sets as the viewing audience, I think. But Nathan, thank you very much for your email. We'll have more of those, please, sir. And if you fancy firing us a voicemail, please do at talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. And speaking of voicemail, see that silky segue. Look at that, seamless. He says, drawing attention to it. We received this voicemail whilst we've been recording, so I've just loaded it into the soundboard. I haven't heard it. It could just be a string of profanity. So we'll see where this goes, shall we? This is from Adam Sheldon.
Hi guys, it's Adam, and my question for listener comms is, from the 9 films that we currently have, what scene most irritates you? What scene annoys you? What scene do you like to fast forward through? What scene do you think, I think I'm going to have a pee break while this is on, or perhaps put the kettle on? What scene is that?
Anything else?
No, Kylo, I think that just about covers it. So that's my question, and look forward to hearing the podcast. Cheers, bye.
Nice.
Well done.
This soundboard thing it's moving on, isn't it? Oh, Carlos, listen.
Wait, what the was that?
Yeah, I loved hearing it on the other episode. It was I'd forgotten that I had sent you that. I'm very impulsive.
Yeah.
As soon as you said, we have soundboard, just send me in your clips. I'm like, well, it was like what, 13 minutes, Mark?
Yeah, it was pretty rapid.
Yeah. So it was great to hear that. And I'm like, is that me? What? Yeah, it's true. I remember now.
Right, so Adam's question. What scene do we fast forward? What scene don't you like, or would you get up and walk away from? And it can't be the entirety of Attack of the Clones.
I was just thinking that.
I wouldn't get rid of the whole. I wouldn't fast forward through the whole film anyway. There's loads of bits I like in that film.
Okay, out of the whole roster of Star Wars content, Rob, pick a scene. What do you dislike the most?
It is from episode 2, but it's pretty short. It's just the bit where, and I realise it's kind of character development, but there's a scene where Anakin and Padme are on Naboo, and they're in council with the Queen, the new Queen, and the Senator, and all that.
Yeah,
and it's just so boring, and just it just slows everything down so hard. And I realise there's character kind of development that comes out of it. She kind of undermines him a bit, and he sort of shows a bit of his temperament and that sort of thing. But it's brutal.
Yeah, their chemistry doesn't always fire. In that film, or even in the one after it. To be honest, I know the moment you mean. There is another moment between the two of them in Attack of the Clones as well. But let's see what Carlos has to say first before I get to that one.
Okay, the first one I could think of is that whole bit when they're on Geonosis and 3PO's head gets on a battle droid's body, and it's, no, stop, please, just stop. That whole part up until the part where they're captured and brought into the arena, which I think that's a great scene. And then Obi-Wan's. The delivery of the lines was, I mean, that's George's fault, obviously, but that scene could have been a lot better than it, overall, I still think is a good scene. But that whole lead up of 3PO is, we did not need him in that movie. Like, it was brutal.
There was a lot of puns in there as well when there was, I'm beside myself and it's such a drag. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's, what am I doing? Shut up.
Some of that stuff, I think, is George aiming directly at the kids in the audience, and that's why it makes us bristle, I think. Maybe we would have dug it when we were smaller, but I don't know.
Those puns really for children? I don't know. I'm not. I think it was just that was just a swing and a miss. There was
It may have fallen between both audiences, I think, that joke. Yeah. I'm not going to pile on Attack of the Clones too much. There are other scenes in there that I think are problematic, but I'm going to go back to the OT to A New Hope, the special edition of The New Hope.
Oh, okay.
And it's the Jabba in Docking Bay 94.
Oh, terrible.
And every version of it, it makes me want to look away just so that I don't judge it too harshly. And it does take me out of the movie a little bit. Just because the Jabba in that scene's never really seemed to have any weight, any mass to him, and he seems to be too small when compared to Han. And they had to do that because of Harrison's eye line when he shot with the original actor. But Jabba seems a hell of a lot bigger in Return of the Jedi to me. And I know he's on the dais and everything, but he still seems like there's a lot more mass to him. And even in the Phantom Menace, that thing at the pod race, that model, that CGI model of Jabba seems to have a lot more mass than the thing that they plugged into A New Hope. So that's something that really does turn my head and my stomach, to be fair.
Now, if I can, just when you talk about that pod race, the race itself is quite cool, but all the stuff that's happening around it with Kitster and Greedo jumping up and not even in sync, and Jabba falling asleep, and that two-headed announcer idiot. It's just terrible, just terrible.
Yeah,
it's so hard. It's so hard to watch, and it ruins what is a great dragster race. And I know the guys on Tumbling Saber, they actually quite like the pod race, and I'm assuming most people do. But it's just, like I said, if it was just a pod race, it'd be a lot better. But all that surrounding stuff is like, did you have no time to think of something better?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's tough, man. There are some very weak sauce moments, even in the OT, where it's like, oh, geez, move along. Like,
Move along.
yeah.
See, the soundboard's paying for itself. Yeah, there are moments in those movies where you can see George focusing on the technical side more than on the aspects of the story or anything to do with character. You know, even, I mean, you're telling me he didn't have enough time to do a second pass of Jake Lloyd saying yippee as he jumps off the counter when Watto says go home. Just even if you made it sound like the kid had said that word once in his life before, it just seemed like that was the first day he'd ever uttered those words. And George was like, right, that's in the can, let's move on. So there's,
Seriously.
you know, there's stuff in there where you can see George the editor collecting his material and not George the director thinking about character or thinking about narrative. And they're worrisome, those things. But I think, you know, when we're talking about what George got right, it's a way bigger number.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Do we want to do any more of those, or do we want to move on to Jared's question?
One last one. Force Awakens. Rob, we're going to do the I think the commentary with Robert Cast.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Force Awakens, and you'll hear me repeat this there. That whole Hitler-esque speech from Hux when they decide that they're going to destroy the rebellion.
Yeah.
Well, not the rebellion, but the Republic. Excuse me. And the weapon is loading, and it's so. I don't even know what the word is. Just it's rumbling, and that beam shoots out of the weapon.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. Where's this going? And then that beam splits off into 6 little fireworks, and all the 6 planets of the Republic are like within eyes view of each other. It's like, what are they doing? What is that?
There's a lot of centralized. You know, it's very centralized. That galactic government.
that whole thing we could have done without.
Yeah, unless they just like. You know, we've been invited to a cake and lemonade party on in the Hosnian system. It's like, what's that flashing? Oh no!
Is it all hosted by Hux? Is that?
It's all Eddie Izzard doing all the voice work.
You can hear a Winnie the Pooh moment with "Oh bother."
Oh bother! Just before they're vaporized. Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, and also in that scene. Donald Gleason is really playing to the cheap seats in that moment.
Oh, see, I love that.
You love that, don't you?
I do.
That didn't sit so well with me.
I like that. I like the hamminess of it all.
He's better than that.
General Hux.
Maybe you should have told Brian Johnson that.
General Hux.
He doesn't seem to have
didn't
the same
get the memo.
No, doesn't seem to have the same faith in him as we do.
All right, let's move on to. Thank you, Adam, for your voicemail that came in last minute. I'm so glad that that's easy to sort of plug that into the show. Carlos, did you want to take? Have you got the show notes? I loaded them into the.
I do.
You got them.
Loaded
did you want to take Jared Peppard's question?
I'd love to. Yes, from Jared Pepper. Couple of thoughts I had listening to the podcast with the idea you had about Boba Fett and Hans. Maybe having mutual respect for one another, maybe even working together. Greedo was very willing to kill Han and collect the bounty, whereas Boba said, he's no good to me dead. Not, he's worth more to me alive. Do you think he could have been trying to at least spare Han's life, as Vader most likely wouldn't have thought twice about killing him? Also, with Luke's thoughts of killing Ben, do you think that could have been a reason for his resentment of the old Jedi Order, including Obi-Wan's teachings, seeing as death seemed to be the answer to a lot of their problems? Mace Windu believing that he had to kill Palpatine, which he did. Yoda went to kill Palpatine and sent Obi-Wan to kill Anakin. Yoda and Obi-Wan believed Luke had to kill Vader. And the idea behind this goes even back now to the Legends of the Old Republic comic book series, where the series revolved around a Jedi student who escaped the slaughter of all the other students by their masters and the council after a vision of one of them turning to the dark side. Cheers, Jared. So did Boba Fett try to get Vader to spare Han's life with the "he's no good to me dead" line?
I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I like that a lot. I have this thing, I mentioned it today in today's Talk Star Wars Daily podcast, that I like when a story can include older elements and it reframes the elements for us. It's not just like they're picking up the characters, playing with them, putting back where they left off, or putting back where they found them, you know. This could recontextualize. If we learn that Han and Fett have a relationship in Solo's own movie, and it recontextualizes that moment, I think that would be really interesting. Because it'll recontextualize a bunch of other stuff, like when Boba Fett pulls that blaster up around the carbon freezing chamber. He's very quick to pull that blaster up against Chewie, and Vader pushes that down, doesn't he? So let's see how this plays out. It will recontextualize that moment too. You need to start reading into everything again, and I think that's a tall order for a storyteller. But if they can make that work, I'll be thrilled.
I'm good with that. That sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, I see something where the Imperials. We know that just from Empire, where one of the Imperial officers says that bounty hunters, we don't need that type of scum, you know.
Yeah.
So where there's a sticky situation when maybe Han and Boba Fett are maybe looking to collect the same bounty or the same freight from someone, and they're kind of having a go at each other, and then they need to help each other escape the Imperials, and there's a respect that's gained between them for having gone through a particular tough moment. Maybe that would give it more sense. As of right now, I don't see how there's like this. They're going to have to, like you said, recontextualize, because there's nothing that tells me that they've had a prior relationship.
No.
Yeah.
And that's good. I think that's what makes this tantalizing, because if they can pull that off, then I think we're in for something really special. It is less interesting to me if Boba Fett turns up and there's animosity and he leaves and there's still animosity, because I know that exists already. So
that's nothing new, is it?
It doesn't move the ball forward, and I'm more interested in seeing the other option personally. But yeah, I find that fascinating. All right, what about the second part of the breakdown?
Yeah, did Luke immediately go into Kill Bill mode when Ben was younger because of the Jedi way to kill their enemies? I have to say it was written Kill Ben, but I put in Kill Bill just for fun.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think this is. I think Luke's been brought to the boil, hasn't he, in this pot of Jedi lore? And yeah, there's a lot of for a group of people who don't believe in absolutes. They seem to take this pretty definite position, don't they? On let's go and kill him.
Yeah, and we see it in Revenge of the Sith, right? He says only a Sith deals in absolutes, which in itself is an absolute.
Yeah,
but they're so kind of convinced that they're on the right side that it doesn't matter if they're not adhering to their own tenets, because they're on the right side of the argument as far as they're concerned. It just kind of speaks to their hubris.
Yeah, but it comes back to the point of view thing, doesn't it? Because how are they any different from the Empire?
Yeah,
or from Sidious, really, when you start to consider the minutiae, the little small motivations that push characters like Dooku and Sidious into action. They're all present in the Jedi, aren't they? And they're the qualities that Padme saw and was troubled by in Anakin. Why would you try and impose your understanding of order on other people? That's not democracy.
No.
So the Jedi looking at this as in, there's only one way for you to handle this, Luke. You've got to go and kill Vader. But that's not the thing at all. And in fact, the way the story plays out, we learn that no, that's not even required.
No.
But I can imagine that the reason Luke went into hiding was because he was very disappointed and troubled by the way he reacted to the problems he was facing with Ben.
Yeah.
And I think that he frightened himself into addressing what was happening again. The old problems, everything that all the sins the Jedi were guilty of, they were coming back in the form of Luke. And he was making the same mistakes of arrogance and hubris.
Do you feel... Sorry, go, Carlos.
No, go.
No, really. Fine.
Okay. So if you look at the line, the Jedi have to end. When Luke says that, everybody kind of, it doesn't make, why is Luke giving up on the Jedi? And there's all these arguments. But I mean, we've had 6 prior movies to show us the failure, the continuous failure of the Jedi mindset. And even, Mark, you're aware. I'm going to be starting another Star Wars podcast called Heavy Talkers, where we take a character or a theory, and I'll just break it down and try to understand exactly, what we as fans come to think of certain characters and why we get to those points.
Great.
Now, thank you. Now, everybody loves Qui-Gon. Oh, Qui-Gon, he was different from the Council. He was this, he was that, and he was wise, and he's badass. Yeah, it's Liam Neeson. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. But there's one thing, and it's the first line of the movie, pretty much, where Obi-Wan says, I feel something dangerous and elusive. Now, he knows that's probably right at the time where Sifo Dyas is killed and Count Dooku becomes Palpatine's apprentice. Okay, that's right about that time. If you look at the timeline of when things happen, so Obi-Wan is feeling that, and Qui-Gon suppresses it and says, "No, you have to focus on now." But Master Yoda said, "I should be mindful of the future, not at the expense of the living moment." What if Qui-Gon stunted Obi-Wan from figuring out who the real danger was? You know what I mean? Like there's, and that comes back to my point. It's the failure, the complete failure at every step of the Jedi throughout all 8 movies. And I think the redemption of the Jedi is what Luke does at the end of The Last Jedi. That's my interpretation of it. I'm not trying to turn anyone's opinion of it, but that to me is. And only Master Yoda in his ghost form, I think, came to realize that. So it's interesting that, Jared would talk about all the failures of the Jedi here. And that's the main reason why we got to the point we were at the end of The Force Awakens and at The Last Jedi. So I think it's great. It's a nice way to contextualize the whole story. And it makes me quite. Obviously, I'm excited for Episode 9, but there's so much anticipation there because we're going to see Luke, and maybe longer than what we saw Yoda in the previous movie. So he might have a bigger hand to play, and seeing as how he can actually not interfere is the wrong word, but he can actually interact with the living world. Who knows what we could see? I think it's fantastic.
He will certainly bring a unique perspective when you think he knows about Sidious. He mentions it in Last Jedi, so he's obviously aware of what we're aware of. He's in the God seat the way we are. But that's a fascinating perspective, Carlos, on the death of Sifo Dyas and the moves involving Dooku at that time, that early. That's fascinating. I'm really intrigued by that. Rob, have your say on the Kill Bill, on the Luke going to Kill Bill mode.
I don't know. Something just kind of flashed into my head as we were talking, and actually, it's kind of a disappointment of the. I don't know if it's a disappointment of the movie or the kind of the weird nature of the Force and stuff, but it almost feels like that whole Kill Ben thing is I'm struggling here. It's a kind of suggestion that nobody in the galaxy has free will, because he almost by kind of succumbing to that base hesitation, he sort of self-fulfills a prophecy that Snoke he sees the darkness kind of clouding his mind. Like, he doesn't know that. He doesn't know. He has a kind of vibe of this stuff, and he saw his future, but he caused that future.
Yes.
That's a very odd kind of situation. It's only just popped into my head as we've been talking, but that's actually, I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's kind of a little bit.
it's history repeating itself, right? It's Anakin
Exactly.
again.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
Because if
And
Anakin doesn't force choke Padme, maybe she doesn't die, and he self-fulfilling prophecies. That's why Kyle loves that song. That he plays it at the end of every, because he's like, it's like Anakin's story, and I never wrote it in that vein. I had never thought of it in that way, but when you look back, and it's exactly that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
It does pose a question if Luke had, or not even Luke, if Obi-Wan back in the days of Anakin had taken direct action, how would the story be any different? And it's hard to know. It's hard to put yourself in their position. It's easy with hindsight to sort of look back at it and say, oh, they should have taken that action because it would have saved an awful lot of lives. But aren't they making the right choice by not taking action again? Because they haven't done anything yet. Ben hadn't done anything. Maybe if Ben hadn't woken up and seen his uncle standing over him with a lightsaber, maybe he wouldn't have been scared into becoming the thing he became. So for Luke, even if he doesn't set foot into Ben's room, the future changes. But we learnt from Yoda, it's always in motion. So from moment to moment, the decisions we make have huge ramifications on the future. So another Yoda line from episode 1, was it episode 1 or episode 2? Their ability to see the future is diminished because the dark side is clouding everything. To me now, from our conversation this evening, that seems less like it's a fog of this black magic that's surrounding the Jedi, and more like Sidious being insidious and making these little moves is forcing people to react in ways that makes it impossible for the Jedi to read the future, because there are too many things in motion, like watching pool balls smash around the table. And whereas before, when there was no Sith, it would have been paint by numbers day in, day out for the Jedi. They're just like these police monks going through the motions.
Exactly.
But once Sidious's plot is set into motion, all bets are off, everything changes, and suddenly the future is awash with options.
Well, that's the genius behind Sidious, the evil genius, is that he uses that against them. He uses that he plays them off each other, and he uses that against them. And it's, I mean, honestly, the most interesting character in Star Wars is Sheik Palpatine. That's for me, that 100%. He's the most interesting character. I would love for them to go back and do an origin story, because that to me is it's everything. It's everything we've. It puts everything into perspective after of Star Wars. So it might have been, George might have written it as, okay, he's the bad guy and he's like the ultimate bad guy, and Anakin's the guy that works for him, but he's going to turn on him, and it's Anakin's story. But the story is nothing without Palpatine.
You're right, and he does the most wonderful thing as well, which he sits quietly and waits for his enemy to reveal their weakness, and then he uses it against them. You just watch the way he said at the end of Phantom Menace he was going to watch Anakin, and then he saw Anakin develop into a young man and watched every single move and knew exactly what points to push, what buttons to push, because Anakin was revealing himself to be insecure, a very, very powerful, insecure person. And Palpatine played those cards to his own advantage, didn't he? So,
and Palpatine tried to make his move a lot earlier in Revenge of the Sith. Once Dooku's beheading, they were trying to escape, and he told Anakin, "We got to leave him here, because he knows that this guy's his weakness. This is his brother." And now, if Anakin could accept the fact that Obi-Wan is dead, and they leave together, he could become his apprentice a lot sooner. It's and that's the struggle of Anakin. That's the whole story.
That's good, man. You nailed it.
Yeah, and we see it again in Snoke, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't it implied that that's what Snoke's done with Ben? Is he's played on the kid's insecurities, and he's poisoned the boy's mind about his father, and it's ultimately he's pushing him do this, do this, do this. Kill the mantra that we hear from Ben or Kylo Ren, kill the past, let it die. That's Snoke. If you remove everything that person leans on, everything that qualifies that person's identity, what are they left with? And Kylo was left with nothing. And that's why he was so dependent on Snoke. Snoke groomed him into that position. I think Kylo's trying to do that with Rey. And that whole thing about your parents are nothing. You're nothing, but not to me. He's grooming Rey. But she has learnt from her experience in the cave that she doesn't really need anybody but herself. That's what she sees in that vision, right? That's all she needs to be able to move meaningfully forward. And I find this stuff fascinating. I don't know whether this stuff is intended or whether it's being interpreted by, whether it's being told by the storytellers or this is what we're choosing to see. It doesn't really matter. This is the story we've got, and it's rich and it's wonderful. Jared, great questions. Great
Fantastic,
questions. Yeah. All right, we're running a little long, so what I'm gonna suggest we do is we take Arthur's question and then we jump to Katie's. And I'll roll Derek's question over to next week because I think that's going to be a long one. We good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Rob, did you want to take Arthur's question?
Sure. So this is from Arthur Crouch. And Arthur writes, sorry, fellas, I've been a little out of the loop as I've been taking a Star Wars break the past 2 to 3 weeks. And I felt a little overloaded with everything leading up to The Last Jedi. So if these things have been covered, I apologize. Disney seems very calculated. Did they sense Last Jedi to be divisive potentially, therefore bring in JJ back to bring it back to where people might feel more comfortable, even with the announcement last September? My next question goes fanboy. We see the new Jedi power of a Force ghost using lightning like the Bendu. Any chance Luke is not done fighting? This may be a chance for JJ to reconcile any negative Luke feelings out there about the character. He did tell Kylo he would haunt him. The Resistance has almost been wiped out and no Leia will be gone. Why not a final act of Force ghosts coming to help in some way with Luke, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and even Qui-Gon? I know this won't happen, but why can't they answer the call for help? Love the show, Arthur. So, did they bring JJ back to soften to make the Last Jedi pill easier to swallow? I don't necessarily think they did. No, I think if they did anything in that vein, it would be not pushing Han Solo back.
First of all, I don't think Disney did anything. I think it was Lucasfilm.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I should
we should clearly, separate the two.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I'm sure that's. I presume that's what's intent. That's what's.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
In the question. So so Lucasfilm. I think if they did one thing, portion of The Last Jedi being divisive, it was maintaining the May release date on Han Solo.
Yep.
Because it's going to be a kind of, I would imagine at the very least, a more warm and familiar kind of Star Wars movie plot line at the very least, if not an experience. So I think that somebody raised that in the Rogue Squadron Patreon chat, and ever since they've said that, I can't get it out of my head. So it's just stuck. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling that they're onto something, possibly, because it does seem otherwise. Why would you not take that December spot that's currently not being occupied by, I think, anything? And why would you instead go up against your own other big budget movie? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, they had to move the chess pieces around, because if they moved Solo up to December, because it was always planned to come out in May.
Yeah.
Not 9 was scheduled to come out in May the year after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it kind of they would have had to move both in that circumstance.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I believe because 9 was scheduled to come out in May of 19, and it got pushed back to December.
Yeah.
Once Trevorrow was given his walking papers, and I don't know. I think they wanted to show a stability or faith in the storytellers to keep Solo at its original date and only move one of the movies.
Yeah,
I think it made more sense actually to move Episode 9 back 6 months.
I think
it's going to kill us. Literally, like it's going to be very literally, basically, it's going to be very difficult.
Hang on, where's my beer?
Yeah, it's going to be very hard to digest it. But I mean, once we get there, it's just going to be the anticipation is going to be just that much higher. So it's interesting.
Yeah, there are other forces at play with the movement of episode 9, and I think with the complicated issues surrounding the loss of Carrie, that gives them more time to tell a story that honours and considers the loss of the actress and the character. So then they needed more time, I think, to break story, if nothing else. And it would have been ideal to move both back to Christmas if it was happening at the same time, but I don't think it happened at the same time. I think it would have sent a lot of mixed messages, and maybe because Disney and Lucasfilm planted their May flag in the ground for Solo, they were going to hit that date or go bust, because they don't want to be seen to do something else that will be perceived as a weak move,
Exactly,
or broadcasting any doubt in any way.
I don't know if I understand what you mean, and you're probably right, but I feel like they don't need to project that kind of, that kind of almost like faux assuredness, because they've made best part of $3 billion in ticket sales on 3 movies. That's fine.
That's fine from the business perspective. But
they made $3 billion in 2 movies. Not
exactly. Yeah, sorry, four in total, four and some change.
That's all right for the quarterly shareholders, but you've got people out there, the fans that don't care what these movies do in terms of box office. They only care about what it adds to their canon. They only care about the films. That's fine, but they are dropping $4 billion across 3 movies and all the merchandise and all the assorted other bits and pieces.
So
then but the Last Jedi made a lot of money, and it's number 9. We're going to get to the box office numbers briefly in the news, but it's done significant bank. But look at the negative reaction to it. That conversation could be better. That conversation could be, what is the approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment? It's like 47% or something.
Right.
It's 90%, or not on, is it 90% fresh, 47% audience rating? That's not a positive split. So it could have been.
Mark, I think in this age right now, I don't mean to cut you off, but I do. But this Rotten Tomatoes, this aggregate score of people who have something to prove behind the keyboard. Kyle posted an article about what DC fanboys are going to try to do to Black Panther. Okay, and it's like. I take no stock whatsoever in what the freaking score is on Rotten Tomatoes. It's I like to go look at it quick, see, okay, whatever, but I'm not going to say, 40% of people don't like. Who are these 40%? Who are they really?
Yeah.
And those are the 40% that like it, right? So who's the 60% that do they actually have an interest in? Did he even watch the movie? It's we don't know. We don't know that, and at this point. And at this point, seeing as how, from everything I've heard, and you're looking at the character of Black Panther, the actor, the people taking care of that movie, I don't see how this thing won't be a success. And if the score of Rotten Tomatoes, the fan score goes below 60%, and the freshness is at 90, come on, you got to go with the people who have a bit of integrity.
I don't know if I agree that they're. The press are necessarily the ones who have the integrity, and only because I'll give you an example, right? So, the latest the latest issue of Empire magazine, the movie magazine in the UK. I don't know if you have it in Canada, but the latest issue of Empire has a fan poll with the 20 most important cinema villains as voted for by the fans, and Thanos is on the front. What's he done? He's done nothing, but they want to put him on the front because they want to kind of big up Infinity War. And but all he's done really is sit on a chair and go. Rrr. Yeah, that's not much. Like and to be clear, I've looked at the poll, and from what I can see, he doesn't rate in the top 20. But the point is, they wanted to put him front and center because it's the new Marvel movie, and I do feel like even if there's no financial interest, I'm not suggesting that, you know, the press who review these movies are kind of being paid off, but I do feel like this whole kind of team sports attitude that everybody's got to everything now, especially in pop culture, has bled through into the press as well. I do feel like a lot of the outlets, they see Marvel as like their team, so they have to give it, you know, they have to give more rope to Marvel, even if it's not very good. Like, you know, and in fact, I'm going to check it now because I'm curious about, because I've seen most of the Marvel movies.
Do you think that maybe them putting Thanos there is like maybe foresight and how people will be reacting to the movie coming up?
Maybe. I mean, that may be what they're kind of alluding to, is like he's going to be the kind of he's going to be up there once you've seen him do this stuff. But you know, he's based on what people can vote for. He's done nothing. You know, he's like I say, he's literally just sat in a chair.
I think it's just because he's the next villain up, right? He's for that issue of Empire magazine, Infinity War's on its way. He's the next villain up. That he's present in everyone's mind. So it could be that list will have Jason Voorhees, the shark from Jaws, and Darth Vader on it.
I think I think it has those three exactly. Yeah.
So it's just, you know,
maybe not top three, but there is.
We're just dealing with. We're talking about villains as a concept. He's the next one up, so that draws everyone's attention. They ride the wave of the Infinity War press cycle. That's kind of what that is. But you know, this conversation, it's kind of. We should really devalue both numbers, and then I don't know where that leaves us. Because you know, if we're saying that there are factions at play that are going to chip away at the integrity of those numbers on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't doubt. I don't doubt that you're right for a second.
Yeah, no,
then it makes that a useless metric. And I think that the box office, even though I'm in love with it because I'm a nerd and I like numbers. Those numbers are really only there to sort of satiate me. They're not a sign of any quality. And the conversation that's spun out, even in our little community around The Last Jedi, has been extraordinarily divisive. And I don't know how many agendas are at play here when we have people that turn up legitimately saying, I'm kind of lost. And then we have other people turning up saying, you've got to go and see it again. And that becomes a conversation in and of itself in our little ecosystem. That's the thing that perhaps we need to be paying attention to. There is a split. Those metrics that we are seeing, they are at odds with each other, but they do exist, even in our own little backyard right here. You know, there are some people that have lost some faith in Star Wars. There are some people that are deeply concerned about where it's going to go next. And no amount of bank is going to help that. If Disney and Lucasfilm had played it a little safer with The Last Jedi, and I know what I'm saying, but it doesn't reflect my opinion, then the conversation and the box office would have been more aligned, and then they would have been safe. I don't think that they felt like they were in a situation, they didn't feel that safety with The Last Jedi, and that's why Solo hasn't moved, potentially. You know, I don't know how married I am to that statement, but that seems to be a thing. That if they come out of The Last Jedi and they're walking on sunshine and think, brilliant, everything went well, let's just push this film back. Now I think that broadcasting that could have been worrisome. Sorry, Carlos.
No, I was just going to say, the box office mojo, I believe, is what you quote most of the time.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And it's not just for you. It's there for a reason. It's because if it still exists in this age, it's because that people actually are interested by these numbers.
Sure.
And I'd like to I don't want to say challenge, but how many of those movies in the top 10 are real crap?
I'm not a big fan of Titanic, but apart from that, you know.
No, but it was a great movie though. Whether you're a fan of it,
there's a lot of really well done stuff in it for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
I find it really
I never saw Avatar. I never saw it. I'm not interested. Blue cat people. It's not for me. But I'm not gonna discount the fact that it made over $2 billion.
Sure.
People love the movie.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
whether I liked it or not doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of people who liked it. Maybe there was 1 million people who went to watch that movie 10 times.
I would say at least, for sure.
So it doesn't make the movie any less good, or
Yeah. Well,
it's all about personal taste.
I think you're absolutely right, Carlos. And I think actually you're touching on the point that we've been driving home a lot on this show over the last few weeks is, what somebody thinks of, what another person thinks of The Last Jedi doesn't change my opinion a jot. My opinion is still, I liked it. It's not my favorite. There's a lot I like about it. There's a lot I don't like about it. But, I've had people kind of say stuff to me about, I really like that bit that you didn't like, and vice versa. And that's fine. Everything lands differently with different people.
Of
that's
course.
just that's how it works. And that's true of anything. Like, you're absolutely right. Just because I didn't enjoy Titanic doesn't mean it didn't make stupid amounts of money, because other people liked it so much that it more than offset my disinterest.
Oh my God! The single girls watching that movie in 1998. It was
right? Yeah.
It was a weekly occurrence.
Wet Leonardo. I mean, that was the only bit of it I kind of dug.
Yeah, Rob was right there, leading that pack of girls.
But that movie did a lot to destroy romance over the next 10 years.
Well, yeah.
It's been 20 years now. It's been 20 years that it's come out. So, culturally, that movie was, whether you like it or not. I mean, I liked it when as soon as the ship hit the iceberg. I mean, that was a great movie. Like,
there's some cool bits. There's some really cool bits in it. Yeah, that's interesting. You touch on the culture thing, because that's something somebody pointed out to me. It might have been you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
For all the money that Avatar made, it left no imprint in pop culture.
Yeah, there's no real cultural footprint, because it's not.
No,
you don't see there's not a celebration for Avatar.
No,
there's not people falling over themselves to get anniversary action figures for Avatar, or looking at the next wave of Black Series of Avatar figures. That it doesn't.
Blue Series, it'll be.
Well done, nicely done. It doesn't. It hasn't had the same effect as a Star Wars movie or even a Star Trek movie or TV series.
Yeah,
it hasn't been that culturally penetrative.
No.
It was like most of Cameron's things, because he makes the trends. It was subject to different market forces, like we've said before, the same as Titanic. There were other things surrounding it that made it the success. And if you look at that top 10, there are other movies in there as well that is true of. There's one of the Fast and the Furious movies up there. The last one, I believe it was the last one to feature Paul Walker. So there are other market forces at play that influence attendance and influence that box office. Now, if Paul Walker hadn't have passed away, I'm not sure that film would have done those sorts of numbers. Now, that's not a palatable thing to say, and I need to point out I'm a big fan of that franchise, and I was a huge fan of Paul Walker. But that is, unfortunately, something that needs to be considered when you're looking at that film being present in that position in the chart. Because Paul Walker's death, unfortunately, was a market force at play that drew people in. Gave that film legs it may not have had.
And it makes you wonder if there's I don't imagine it doesn't give it as big a jump, but there's probably a few people who did that same thing with Last Jedi because of Carrie.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't have more of an effect, and who knows, maybe it will, because we're only 7 weeks into this film's run. So.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe it did. It'd be interesting to, obviously we're never going to know.
Yeah, that might be the disparity between the audience reaction. You're right.
What that box office would have been without
we'll never know.
We don't know. We'll never know.
It may have been a lot. It may have been a lot less. But just to get
DVD
us back,
sales will sorry, not to cut you off. The DVD sales will tell a lot about that.
Yes, very true.
Yeah.
To swing us back to Arthur's question briefly, I just want to address this point.
Oh yeah,
it's fine. I love it when we go rambling like this. But was J.J. Abrams brought back to calm the nerves of fandom because Disney anticipated the blowback from The Last Jedi? I suspect that J.J. was already in place long before the first inklings of any trouble. And remember, all we were hearing from Camp Lucasfilm was how positive The Last Jedi was, how well Ryan had done. And I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm not sure if you want to calm fanboy nerves, JJ's the way to go.
Exactly.
I'm not sure that's true, because look at some of the reactions to The Force Awakens. So the way to go with that is probably George Lucas. That's the way to go with that. It's JJ may have been the last name on the list to fulfill that function. But yeah, I think the decision to bring him in was probably made before they even had any inkling there was going to be blowback. And yeah, maybe maybe he wouldn't have been the guy to have put in the big chair anyway. If your mission statement was calm people's nerves.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if it's what the effect is of making JJ finish something he starts. Because that's something. Apparently, a few of my friends who are big fans of the Abrams kind of productions, he's quite good at creating amazing things, starting them off, and then just buggering off and leaving them to do their thing.
Do you know what I say to that, Rob?
Yeah.
10, 11, and 12. That's what I say to that. Episodes 10, 11, and 12. So JJ can say, I'm not wrapping anything up.
Oh, that's true.
I'm going to throw more stuff up in the air and leave it to the next person.
Yeah.
All right, the second part of Arthur's question then. Could we see a Jedi crew turn up to save the day?
Jedi Ghost Crew.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Thank you, Carlos. The Jedi Ghost Crew. That's why I bolded that sentence out, because that's something that I think is incredibly cool. And will that happen, do you think? Can we expect to see something like this?
Don't know. That sounds a little bit hokey to me.
Well, Arthur does follow it up with, I know this won't happen.
No, well, yeah, but I mean, he's asking, could we see it? And my sort of, maybe, but I hope not, because it sounds like cheese. You know, they just come out to a little green bag, just walking down.
Well,
down the ramp.
In Star Wars lore, there was almost a moment where Obi-Wan and Yoda could have been involved in the fight between Vader and Luke.
Kind of liked that they weren't, because I'm familiar with what you're talking about. It's kind of in the original ending of Jedi, they were kind of involved more heavily, but I actually quite liked that they were distant and he was by himself.
Yes,
I have a little something. If we continue with today's theme of the Jedi being wrong about everything, when Obi-Wan says, "Okay, but if you face Vader, I cannot interfere," because he's trying to teach a Jedi lesson. Well, to me, that says that Luke will have absolutely no hesitation in interfering if the heroes need a helping hand. So I look at it from that point of view.
Okay, so what? All right, can we talk about that a bit more? What do you think Obi-Wan's position is in that? Then what is Obi-Wan's position? Is he fearful that Luke's going to fall to the dark side and then that's it, you're lost, or is he fearful that if he goes toe to toe with Vader, there is literally nothing he can do physically apart from turn up all blue and look at me, I'm scared? That's pretty much all he's got to throw into the ring.
Well, I think it's 38 years later. I think the whole, we know now that the Force Ghosts can interact, but when Lucas wrote it, there is a chance that they couldn't have. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to really pinpoint and say exactly that's why. But when you take all of the Jedi's actions throughout the saga, he's following some sort of rule. Yeah. In my mind, that's I look at it and this is my headcanon. He can't interfere because it's against the Jedi code. But it's time for the Jedi to end. So I believe that Luke has
different rules.
Different rules, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. In the spirit of what we were saying earlier about the Han Solo of it all and about new story elements, recontextualizing old story elements, if we were to learn in episode 9 that the Jedi can, after death, turn up and interact physically with their surroundings, which we've seen, Yoda bopping Luke with his cane is a clear sign that they can interact with their environment. The lightning to the tree, another sign they can interact with their environment. Mm-hmm. We might see Luke more physically capable as a post-death Force entity, that he might be able to physically be involved in some way in something that Rey's facing or anyone is up against. And it will then recontextualize Obi-Wan's statement. If you choose to face Vader, I can't get involved. I can't. To me, that sort of broadcasts, if you choose to face Vader, then you've gone down the path towards the dark side, and then you're lost, and that's it, right? Would that work for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I say, my thing is kind of that looking back on it, I guess, reflecting on it, the actions of Yoda in Last Jedi kind of throw holes into the OT, because obviously now we know there was nothing to stop them physically getting involved in terms of manifesting something to kind of influence the world around them. It's I don't know how I feel about that. It's a little bit of a...
You can view it as a plot hole, or you can view it as recontextualizing, because we didn't spend a lot of time with them. And what we saw, because you remember, Rob, we've gone backwards and forwards on this. Is it the Force Ghost that's doing the work, or is it the Force? Is it the viewer? Is it Luke that's doing the work? So Obi-Wan becomes clearer to Luke the more powerful Luke gets, or is Obi-Wan becoming more clearer to Luke because Obi-Wan himself is becoming more powerful? Right. If it's the latter, then it could explain why the Jedi have developed their abilities. By the time of the Last Jedi, they've gotten stronger,
maybe,
or more capable.
Yeah. I think the snow was interfering with the satellite connection. So when Luke sees Obi-Wan on Hoth, I don't think it's because he's not strong in the Force. It's just it's a technical glitch.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something. You might be onto something. The Skype call was breaking up. We've experienced that. Yes. Well, should we do a round table? A quick vote? Who would like to see this Jedi Ghosts rocking up? Because I'm going to vote for yes. I'm assuming you're a no, Rob.
I am. I'm okay. I'm okay with them appearing. I'm not okay with them rocking up and Top Gun
owning the day.
The A-Team.
I want that. I want Qui-Gon to slow high five Yoda up the top and then down below. That's what I want to see. All of them playing volleyball on the beach of Arcto.
As long as it doesn't look like Greedo and Kitster, I'm fine with
it.
Yeah, that would be a low bar to aim for, I feel.
Carlos, are you a yes to the Force Ghost A-Team, or are you a no?
No, not for an A-Team, no. I'm in for Luke coming in and doing what he can do, just to stem the tide or to turn the tide of an eventual battle. Not to do all the fighting, not to do what he did at the end of Last Jedi, to stand in front of the whole First Order. But if it's just to come in and maybe distract or pillar of fire, why not? Yeah. If it worked in the Bible, why not in Star Wars?
Yeah, well, we've seen something that was the lightning from Yoda was kind of a precursor to that. But I think Luke's appearance alone for Kylo would do as much damage, making that kid lose control. So that might be enough. Excellent. All right, thank you, gentlemen. I think what we'll do is we'll jump to our break there. Carlos, you need to leave us, don't you?
I do. I need to fly. I have fatherly duties.
Okay, well, thank you for dropping in, my friend. It's been great fun to have you on.
I love them, man. It's anytime, like I said, when I'm able to, I'd be willing to jump on at any time.
Awesome. Always happy to have you, buddy. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, mate. All the best. Cheers, Carlos. We'll speak to you soon.
Have a good show.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, dude.
Okay, we're going to go to our break then very quickly, and when we come back, we're going to have one more listener comms, and that's from Katie, and then we're going to get into some Star Wars news. So we'll be right back. If you'd like to support what we do here at Talk Star Wars, then head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars and become a patron. Your support will help us as we expand our programming to include further shows, and in return, you'll get access to an exclusive VIP Facebook group, a monthly prize draw, weekly Facebook live sessions, priority release podcasts, an exclusive daily podcast, and a whole lot more. Head to patreon.com/Talk Star Wars today and become a TSW patron.
And we're back. So you've just heard all about how you can become a Patreon of Talk Star Wars by visiting us on the Patreon website. And Katie did that. And although this isn't customary, usually this corner would be reserved for Connor or Casey. Katie is also alliterative, so we're going to do that. So this is Katie's corner. And Katie asks, Katie begins with, question time. What is your favourite Yoda moment? Mine is a tie between lifting the X-Wing out of the water. In that moment, he shows how strong he is with the Force and how wise he is. The other moment is his lightsaber fight against Count Dooku, where we see another side to Yoda, his more aggressive side, and how skillful he is with the lightsaber. So what are your favourite Yoda moments?
And we should say we've been joined by Paul. You're there, aren't you, Paul? Have we lost Paul?
I can't believe I'm muted straight away. It's because, well, Rob was on monologue and I'm drinking Horlicks, which to all of our across the pond listeners is kind of old age pensioners drink. And if you met me, you'd understand why. But yes, evening chaps, how are we?
Good thing. I was tempted to sort of try and sell that you'd been on mute for the entire show up until this point.
Yeah.
And you've been trying to make points left, right, and centre, and just being ignored.
I did that last week, didn't I?
You did a little bit, yeah.
I said I've been trying to interject for half an hour and I was on mute. Yeah. It's because I live on Skype at work. I live on Skype at work, seriously. And you just get, well, when it's at work, Rob might know what it's like as well. You just mute if you can.
Yeah.
If you can mute.
Yeah, fair.
All right. Paul,
we kind of touched base on this a little earlier, didn't we, Marcus?
we did, yeah. I threw it out.
We didn't think we were going to have you.
Yeah.
No, I thought it might be interesting if you guys had some time to give it some thought. I know we don't have all that many Yoda moments to take from, but Paul, soon as you join us, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, well, I tried to think long and hard about this. Then I decided, hang on, the more you think long and hard about something, it's actually not your favourite moment. So I decided, well, what do I like most? And it was quite easy for me in the end, to be honest. I don't want to sound. It's not a moment per se, but it was just an ideal. Is the only way I can put it. I mean, since the moment Luke basically was sort of scattering through the branches, going through the fogs, just about to splash down on Dagobah and so on. From that point on, all the way through meeting him and going through the boxes and being a pain in the neck and, can I get your ship out? All that kind of stuff. It was, I just loved getting to Dagobah and meeting the guy, seriously. Going to the hut, Luke's crouching down and having the eating sort of thing. R2's outside, it's throwing down with rain. So for me, it was just the initial meeting. It's unfortunately, I don't want to de-romanticize it. It's also added by, if you've ever seen the behind-the-scenes stuff, what they did for that whole set with Frank Oz under the platforms and everything else. It was just a beautiful storytelling moment with set, with character. Mark Hamill carried it awesome. So did obviously Frank Oz and so on. But that whole let's get to meet this new character. That whole section for me was awesome. I was completely blown away as a kid because I think it was the first time I remember really realistically meeting an alien in a sci-fi movie. So yeah. But that's my take. Not a particular moment,
but Empire is a good.
I can only say when the whole Dagobah sequence from Empire really.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and you're right. Mark really sells that. Without Mark's reactions to Yoda in that scene, I don't know if that puppet would have really worked all that well.
Well, he said he couldn't hear him half the time, so he really did carry it off well.
He picked up a lot of local radio on his ear.
He apparently did. Yeah. Desert Island Discs were coming in, I think, quite often.
Rolling Stones. Rob, your favourite moment?
Mine is also Empire. Mine's a little bit more specific. So it's from it's all the talk of the Force and
luminous beings.
The sort of luminous beings are not this crude matter and stuff, all the way up to lifting the X-wing, and that is why you fail.
Yes.
Because up until then, we haven't had the, we've got a sense that the Force is there, but we've never got a sense of what somebody's capable of if they really kind of throw themselves into it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're impossible.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
That's what he said.
That's what Luke says.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's all impossible.
He's never even seen it.
Isn't that wonderful? And that little book that came out at the end of last year, The Certain Point of View, it builds on, it kind of retroactively builds on Yoda's reception of Luke. How Yoda really wanted to train Leia. That's who he thought he was going to get. And he got the weaker of the two twins. I know what you're going to say, Rob, it's soft canon, but it's an interesting...
I also think it's a weaker of the story.
I haven't read it yet, but it's to me that's one of those moments that sort of adds a little spice into this wonderful stew of this story, and that position on Yoda is quite an interesting one. That you can see how Luke kind of tests is patience, and the line, my favourite moment, is I love everything you guys have said, and obviously I'm trying to do something different, so we're not all going, oh yeah, that's it, and then we move on. The moment as Luke's leaving, and Yoda calls out one final piece of instruction: mind what you have learned. That's just take what you've been given so far, and if you apply that, you might be able to fighting chance. And then as the lights of that ship taking off sort of colour that character in different hues, he goes like a deep orange, reddy sort of colour, and we get that line, no, there is another. And it's the gravity of that line, it's the weight of knowing that it's not all riding on Luke. It kind of puts Luke at risk a little bit, where you think, oh, well, if there's another potential Jedi, we might lose Luke in this. It doesn't all hinge on our hero then, does it? I thought that was quite a clever little thing to do.
Never considered that far.
But it's an interesting read, no? That Yoda's sort of put Luke in a position where we could lose him, because he's not the only hope. He's just the latest one. Now, whether that's Ezra he's talking about, or Kanan, or I think it's more likely Leia. But then, it's kind of, that is a really clever thing to do, I think. But I love that moment, that there is another. Very sweet. I like Katie's moment though, with that lifting the X-wing out. So cool. And the only I'm going to call them all out now, but the only what you take with you warning at the cave as well.
Yeah,
shows
and
so much.
That sort of slow, sort of sinking of the head of like, oh, there's still so much to do.
Yeah, this is all I've got to work with.
You will be.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not afraid. Yeah. It seems that Luke, in that situation, in that scene, any position Luke tries to take to show how capable or how courageous he is met with the exact opposite, isn't it? That is your weakness at the end of the day. You think you got the answers. You think, Han has that moment with Ray as well, doesn't he, in The Force Awakens?
Well, yeah, everything you just said is wrong.
There's that. It's all about these expectations. You need to unlearn what you've learned, go back to zero, and start to build a new skill set around yourself. It's the Jedi way. I love it.
He's a demanding little goblin, isn't he?
He is, but he is adorable. So I'm looking at one on my shelf right now.
I would.
Please.
Oh my.
All right, Katie, thank you so much for stepping into the corner this week and giving us such a wonderful question. Awesome stuff. Are we ready to get into some Star Wars news? We don't have an awful lot this week, but there's a few bits for us to kick around. We got some exciting news this week that Carrie Fisher had won a posthumous Grammy just over a year since her death. The book, The Princess Diarist, was Carrie's reading. This was in a spoken word category. It was Carrie's reading of her own material that won her the award. And this is from, I forget what site I pulled this from now, but this was in an article I read earlier this week. This is a quote. Fisher had been nominated for other awards posthumously, including the Emmy Award and Outstanding Guest Actress in a Comedy Series for a role on Amazon's original series Catastrophe, which was shot over here, I believe. The Grammy is the first award Fisher won since her death in 2016. Carrie had some stiff competition in the spoken word album category, including Bernie Sanders and Mark Ruffalo for Our Revolution, A Future to Believe In, and Neil deGrasse Tyson for Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, and Bruce Springsteen for Something Else. So I think this is really cool. This book I really enjoyed. Have you had the pleasure of The Princess Diarist?
I think I have it, but I don't think I've got to it yet. I certainly don't have the audiobook.
It's very good. It's not as long as most of the audiobooks I seem to download.
Okay.
So I managed to knock this out over a weekend, but it's really fantastic. And it's so lovely to hear it read by Carrie Fisher as well, because it just adds some weight to what's being said. Yeah,
if it's not fiction, I really think it's essential that people read their own books.
Yeah.
I really feel like it adds.
That's a good call, actually.
So much, because there's so many there's so many authors who I'd happily read the book, but if I found out the audiobook wasn't read by them, I'd go, oh, okay. Well, I really feel like if it's not fiction, it should be read by the author.
I totally agree. And it really does. It adds weight to the content, because some of the stuff that Carrie reveals in there would seem salacious if it had come from another writer. Mm. But because it's coming from her, it seems brutally honest, which is one of the qualities that I really admired about Carrie Fisher, is how unapologetic she was about her honesty. And, of the many qualities I admired about Carrie Fisher, that was probably the main thing. But yeah, it's a wonderful book, and I advise going to get it. And if anyone listening to this hasn't had the chance to download The Princess Diarist, you can get it for free on us if you sign up to a 30-day trial on Audible. And you can do that by heading to the books tab at talkstarwars.co.uk. The Princess Diarist is on there. Just sign up for the 30-day trial, get that book. If you don't want to stick with the Audible service, cancel it, and you keep the book. Simple as that. So you can take advantage of it for nothing. And I think if you like Carrie Fisher, you'll love this book. It's fantastic stuff. All right, let's move on to Solo, a Star Wars story news then, because we're going to be talking a little bit about this later on as well. So Solo, a Star Wars story is reportedly rumoured to be getting a new title in China. I don't really know what... we're going to discuss it now, what this could mean. The title is rumoured to be Ranger Solo. And the motivation seems to be dropping the Star Wars connection within the title for fear of some...
immediate blockers.
Contact issue with The Last Jedi. So let's talk about this title in two ways. What could Ranger Solo mean as a title, first and foremost? But also, what do you think this says about Disney and Lucasfilm's appreciation for their limited appeal, or the Star Wars brand's limited appeal in China, the second largest movie market on planet Earth? What do we?
Well, they've got to find a way of opening the box somehow and getting the goods out, haven't they? So it's not the word. It's not the silliest call in the world. The word Ranger is interesting though, because he's. I wouldn't take him to. Does he? Is he one at one point? He's a pirate, certainly. Ranger, though. Not entirely sure.
Aren't there rumours? Yeah, aren't there rumours of Ranger, a new type of trooper called a Ranger Trooper?
It was part of the Lego leaks, and it was a range trooper.
Range Trooper.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe there's something to that.
It feels like there's a connection there to me.
Mm.
And there's been some speculation that an element of this Solo story could recanonize a Legends element that was Han's Imperial past.
Okay.
And if he was, in fact, a range trooper, and we've seen in those Lego leaks, which always seems ridiculous to me to reference these little toy leaks, but there was a Han and Tobias Beckett in Imperial disguise, or Imperial uniforms anyway. So are these two contemporaries in the Imperial army and they jump ship together? Could that be
somebody's... I'm going off at a tangent, but somebody's actually said, is it really a tenuous link to use the Power Ranger terminology within the title, because they are absolutely crazy for it?
Oh,
isn't that Japan?
Is it Japan that's Power Rangers?
Yeah. I feel like I don't know.
Reddit,
that may be true of China as well, but I've always understood it to be Japan that's Power Ranger mad, because they're big on any kind of.
Yeah, no, there's no denying that they are.
Gundam, and all that sort of stuff.
They're into hugely into that stuff. Yeah, as I understand it. But yeah, I don't know about China. I mean, it's entirely possible. I mean, theoretically, what might skew well in Japan might also skew well in China, because they're kind of geographically closer, aren't they? So they're probably going to share a little more culture than
cultural similarities.
The States and China, and
certainly
so
the
on.
media they consume. Yeah, you're not wrong. I like this. I like the potential for this title to reflect something, and not just be an arbitrary word that they've thrown at this film, but that it reflects something from within the story, the plot or the narrative. And the connection to that range trooper that you so astutely pointed out, Rob, I think is really important, and we shouldn't overlook the potential for there to be a connection there. But what I think this means, and I've discussed this on the Daily as well, so if we've got patrons that have heard the Daily, they've heard this, so forgive me for repeating myself, but the big picture, I think this decision by Disney and Lucasfilm to drop Star Wars from the name could qualify as something of a soft reboot for the brand in this ever so important market. Because if rumours are true and people balked at The Last Jedi because it was too deep, there were decades of story behind it, it was impenetrable for audiences that hadn't seen the films that went before it, and it's too intimidating to look back at this huge canon and think, I can't consume all of that. If they're going to do a stealth reboot of Star Wars in China now, this seems like the ideal opportunity because it's introducing the character afresh. It's not built on any understanding. You can come into this thing, presumably, and meet Han, meet Chewie. They meet.
We'll get some cameos, but this is going to be the equivalent of a fresh situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty confident about that.
Which would be the next move if it was me. And I'm speaking as a layman, so take this for what it's worth. But to me, if Solo is a success out there, the next thing you do is re-release A New Hope in China. Because the first thing people do then is go, there's that guy from that film I loved. And then you've got...
Yeah, maybe.
You've got the Falcon, you've got Han, you've got Chewie.
There's a few Blu-rays there.
Yeah, by the time Empire rolls around, people are going to go, look, there's that guy. Don Glover played this character in that other film. So that, you start to reel them in like that. By the time you're 2/3 of the way through the OT, you've got them. And you're ready to then drop the sequel trilogy again to a much different reception, I think. It's about proving that you don't have to read everything, consume everything, play every video game, and watch 4 decades worth of material to get caught up. You just watch Solo. If you love it, you're in. I think that's the ideal opportunity for them to do that. Do you think there's a chance they might do this?
It's not the worst idea, mate.
Yeah, it might totally make sense.
I like it.
Yeah, simply using the word terminology of Ranger in this instance would simply be, a guy with sidearm on his, guy with a sidearm bouncing through the galaxy on various adventures. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a smuggler has a different connotation. If a pirate or a smuggler, they have different connotations.
His story in Star Wars is incidental. It's accidental. He's supposed to be a taxi. That's it.
Yeah.
He's a taxi driver.
Yeah, it just so happens that the thing he's taxiing around is
the most dangerous thing in the galaxy.
Yeah, some sort of contraband. We're not sure what. But yeah, I mean, it could be that the choice, the word ranger might have a different connotation in China, and indeed smuggler or pirate might again bring some baggage with it that would make this character unpalatable. So maybe Ranger and Range Trooper, maybe they have no connection. It could just be something that's very culturally relevant to the character of Han Solo over there. But I do think that it does represent an ideal opportunity to reintroduce Star Wars to this marketplace and give it a solid foundation.
Do you think it could also be a kind of cowboy? What's the word?
Yeah, because that's
touching on that sort of cowboy.
That's a colloquialism, isn't it? Cowboy. I mean, what are they thinking? Oh, it's a young bovine male? What are you saying? To us, the literal interpretation of that, the cowboy phrase, to us, it means something, doesn't it? It means the gunslinger. It means the swaggering braggart. But over there, if you take it literally, what does that mean? So yeah, you're right. It could be just this is getting something that's getting lost in translation potentially, and becoming something new. Yeah. So there's plenty of room for that to be a thing.
It could be that he's the kind of that lone. He starts off as that sort of lone figure, and then realizes by the end that he needs people around him to help him succeed and things like that.
Yeah. Yes. I like it. All right, this next story in the Solo section by the time this podcast drops on Monday might be a moot point, but the lack of trailer has some people feeling that Solo, a Star Wars story, may be moved back to Christmas.
I think we would have heard that by now.
Yeah, I think we would have.
Yeah,
Because that's a big call.
We think we should have seen the movie by now as well. Not the movie, excuse me, the trailer.
I do think that, and but I don't think that. I think at this stage, if for better or worse, I feel at this stage they're going to stick to the May date.
Yes,
I would quite like them to move back to December, but reasons we kind of touched on them earlier when we had Carlos with us. But I feel like it's up against a lot of similar. It's almost at risk of being cannibalized by other Disney properties.
Yeah,
like Infinity War's coming out. Deadpool 2, I think, is due that month, and that will obviously take some money as well because that was the highest rated. I think the most popular R-rated movie ever made. Mm-hmm. Certainly the most popular R-rated superhero movie ever made. But I think they've run the risk. I'm hoping that it won't matter because I feel like the kind of people who would see Infinity War will also make they'll make time and they'll find the money for Solo. If they're that desperate to see both, they'll see both. But it's kind of weird that they've put the fans even in that position to begin with.
Yeah,
that they've even put them in that situation where you're going to have to choose potentially if you can't, if you're not of a sufficiently high, if you don't have enough disposable income to see 2 movies in a month, you're going to have to pick between a Star Wars movie and the kind of culmination of 10 years of Marvel product. It's a weird choice to force people to make.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Indeed. But I think this dropped on inverse.com this week, and it came about a time when I was reading a lot of Solo articles every day, looking at, it was in my Google Alert stream of emails, and there was, within a couple of inches on my phone, you were looking at the Solo trailer is going to drop at the Super Bowl, and then the next thing down, the rumour is there is no Solo trailer going to drop at the Super Bowl, and then one under that is Solo going to move to Christmas? But we really are sort of blowing wildly in the wind here, aren't we? We really don't know what's going on. Yeah, and it's got us all at odds, and I think it's a really interesting sort of situation to be in. But we did have some news come through, didn't we, Rob? Right at the top of the episode.
Yes.
From
a new rumour.
Adam, Adam shared this with us. I'm just going to go to it now. So this was on was it on Fantha Tracks? No, this is on trailertrack.com. Suggesting it as breaking news that the Star Wars Story trailer debuts on Monday, February 5th on Good Morning America, which doesn't discount the mention of the Solo on the listing has now been removed. So this has been updated since this article first came to us. But yes, it doesn't discount the chance of a spot appearing on the Super Bowl, but it seems likely that the full trailer will drop shortly after, which makes perfect sense, really, that you would throw something out there. Now, I've been talking about this on the Daily as well this week, and I'll see if you guys agree with me. I'll keep this brief. Putting out the Solo trailer in the Super Bowl alongside things like Wrinkle in Time, the new Mission Impossible trailer, Jurassic World, possibly the Avengers, and another huge pre-release spot for Black Panther, in my estimation, shows nothing but confidence in Solo.
You've got to be confident, otherwise, yeah.
You're going to go shoulder to shoulder with those heavy hitters. I think it shows confidence.
Well, Star Wars is a big boy of its own right, so
yeah,
go for it.
But there are some people suggesting that this could be a sign that Disney wanted to bury Solo in that spot amongst all those other things, to sort of drown it out so that the film could just quietly go away and die, which I don't think I buy even for a second, because that's a huge, extravagant plot, isn't it? Just to drop millions on a sponsorship spot when you're hoping to sort of cover up this film in some way.
It does seem like an odd choice to spend a ton of money on a film that you have no faith in.
Yes, very much an odd choice. Yeah.
If there's one thing that I would say they clearly haven't done is spend a lot of money on marketing recently.
Yeah, they've saved a pretty penny. I think maybe that's where they're putting it all.
That's a really valid point, though, Rob.
What's that?
from the point of view of long-term PR, there hasn't been any.
Yeah.
It saves a ton of money, man.
Yeah, well, it's true, but
and the word of mouth.
We're doing the work for them by speculating.
We are, aren't we? I mean, fair enough. The people they really need to draw into theatres, they're not going to hear our conversations. They're not going to read our blog posts.
This is the thing, isn't
that's
it?
not going to.
That's
not
the
going to reach
difference
them.
between, a film that makes, I don't know, 750 mil, 800 mil versus one that makes 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
Is that difference of, or that's the difference between the one that makes 780 mil versus 2 billion is the sort of the casual fan. How likely are they to go and see it multiple times?
Yeah, or even once. If they don't know it's coming.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Indeed. If they're not sure, they got no sign of it. Who knows?
Exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Talking about those numbers, the worldwide box office for The Last Jedi. Should we just have a quick update on this? I keep saying I'm going to stick a pin in this now because it's not really doing much, but I can't keep away from it. So the worldwide numbers I grabbed before we started recording earlier today were $1.312.5 billion worldwide. Still sits that film comfortably at number 9 with a significant way to go before it catches up with Harry Potter. What are your guys' feelings on its likelihood to get up there at this point in time?
It's slowing, isn't it?
It's slowing considerably. It's doing most of its business at weekends now. It's not really doing
1.3 billion is nothing to be sniffed at.
Yeah, no, an update now. I've just opened Box Office Mojo. We're now at 1.312.9. So that's taken into consideration an extra day's
300,000.
Take-ins.
Okay.
Which, when you look at what that means in real terms, if we go to the weekend, the money had dropped off all week last week to about 500,000 and then jumped up by 83% on on Friday to just shy of 1 million. Went up 102% the day after to just shy of 2 million. It took, I think that's Monday, 1.3 million, and then we dropped back off again, another 67% drop the next day to around about $300,000.
Well, that's quite natural, depending on what day of the week it is, isn't it? So
yeah, indeed, and the fact that everyone's gone back to school and gone back to work and what have you, it's taking during the day now between $175 and $220 per theatre. And we're only 6 weeks in, so I think it might hang around for a little while longer and just mop up some of these numbers at weekends.
I wonder what Disney's projected DVD sales are.
I don't know, but they'll start to get real numbers now because it's available for pre-order in places. So
right,
they'll start to see real numbers at this point of what people are thinking about the forthcoming 4K, Blu-ray, DVD, digital download, all of that stuff. They'll start to get real ideas of what it's going to do in home entertainment soon. And we're only, 2 months away? Not even that, actually. Less than 2 months away.
Last Jedi DVD is a very good advert for Solo.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, if they include something on there, do you remember in the old days? I've got a VHS box set here that had a behind the scenes of episode 2 with Owen and Baru introducing us to that. Do you remember that?
Okay. Yeah, it rings a bell.
Really interesting little thing on the OT. I think it was on the OT box set that came out. I might be wrong. Maybe it was on one of the VHS releases of. Maybe it was on the Phantom Menace. I'm not sure, but it's interesting the way they used to do that, and I'd be keen to see something
simple extra. A Solo trailer.
The thing is, though, with YouTube, it's very easy to get that content out there to everybody now without it being buried in the extras section of a Blu-ray, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
I wouldn't put it past them to country rock it.
Oh, really? Do you think?
Yeah, I feel like they've been shocking with Rebels.
Oh yeah, they've been terrible with Rebels.
Yeah, it's nothing to. I feel like there's nothing to stop them to say, "Oh, you can't have it because you're not in the right country for it."
You know what that is, Rob?
Rabbit. All right, yeah, that too.
It is, without a doubt, a trap. Okay, one more thing, and then we'll wrap up for the evening. Right, I've put this under Ryan Johnson's trilogy for want of a better place, but there was a tweet this week sent out from somebody who goes by the name of Dark Lord of the It, Johnny Star Wars on Twitter, who sent a tweet to Leyland Chi, who is part of the Star Wars story group at Lucasfilm. And this gentleman tweeted at Leyland saying, "I know your group looks at Legends for ideas and inspiration. Any chance full characters like Revan, Darth Zana, etc. Being resurrected? Or is it more a case of using old characters to create new? Thrawn excluded, of course." And Leyland Chi responded, "You wouldn't believe some of the Legends characters that will be cropping up in various media in the coming months. Hey, if Tag and Bink can show up, anything is possible." Now this really stood out to me because I think there are so many... There's so much going on now with Star Wars. It's not just about Solo and Episode 9, but we've got all these other projects being cooked up. Ryan's got a trilogy. There's at least 2 TV shows on the drawing board. The potential for a third Star Wars standalone movie. So is Leyland indicating that one of these upcoming projects is going to feature a significant use of Legends characters being recanonised? Or is it going to be a throwaway like Tag and Bink in Solo? What do we think?
The tweet gives the impression that there's going to be a broad spread of numerous things.
With no particular focus.
With no particular focus.
I think it might be a bit of a mix. So you might get some significant ones, and you might get some kind of blink and you'll miss it fan service stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like that, like the Rogue One fun, bits.
Aren't they?
Yeah, like the Rogue One bits where you don't need it to enjoy it, but it's there if you want it.
You see Chopper scoot past the door, kind of.
Yeah,
exactly. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the ghost sort of parked outside, on outside the Massassi Temple on Yavin. Yeah, they're cool. They're cool moments, but I'm looking for more to sink my teeth into. I'm thinking Dash Rendar being one of Han's contemporaries in Solo.
Just make the film.
You know, the Outrider's already there. It's in the New Hope Special Edition, right? So we know that that's at least part of canon. So could Dash Rendar be hanging around there somewhere?
He might be in Solo.
He might be. What about Mara Jade? We've got these series that may be being cooked up over at Disney for their streaming service. Is there any chance that we might be able to fill the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, perhaps with an animated series that's not so Disney XD tone, so not so child friendly? There's something a little bit more mature that could feature Mara Jade, and maybe she could even... And I threw this out there the other day, and it's just me thinking out loud, but in honour of Carlos. Could Mara Jade have actually been Luke's wife, and could she have fallen as Luke's skull fell? And could we see a relationship between Luke and Mara Jade on TV between the OT and the sequel trilogy? And will that pop up in Episode 9? The loss of Mara at the school could have been one of Luke's motivations for going into hiding. What do we reckon?
I don't know. That feels like a bit of a reach to me.
Yeah. I was going to say that was getting a long reach.
Shame, because she's she's a character I very much enjoy from Legends, but I think if they haven't introduced her in anything now, it's probably too late.
Do you think?
Yeah, because she's not canon in any way now, is she?
No.
Because she used to have a very rich kind of, a really rich backstory. Because she used to be, she was the Emperor's hand in.
Yes.
In the sort of OT, she was an assassin.
Yeah. That darkness would be interesting to have around Luke, especially if young Ben was exposed to that growing up.
Yeah, true. But I mean, my feeling is somebody like her could turn up perhaps in Rebels.
Yes.
As a sort of side one of those, but that would be one where I probably think it would be worth doing it as a blink and you'll miss it. To be honest.
Really?
Put her in there to one side and
tease it and leave it open, or throw it away.
To throw it away.
Really?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if you're going to do it, I mean, I wouldn't personally. I wouldn't do it, but
wouldn't that be like throwing away a character like Thrawn in Rebels? And look at how well received Thrawn's been, and look how he's everything you've just described as well within his position in Legends, they're comparable. Those two characters, are they not, in terms of their place in Star Wars lore? He's like a top ticket character, the same as she is. No.
Yeah, I mean, to a point. I don't know. I would, like I say, I would personally not introduce her in that respect. But if you were going to, that would be a way of doing it. But I say it wouldn't be how I'd do it, to be honest. You know, in terms of who I'd bring back, you know, Old Republic characters in mentions. Like, don't just have Bane, have Revan, have Malak, have all of those.
And this is why I dropped this article in the Ryan Johnson section, because we know this guy's got 3 films he's working on now.
Mm-hmm.
Is Leyland indicating that Ryan's going to dip into Legends and bring some of those characters back out and recanonize them?
Maybe.
And maybe even entertain some of those Old Republic characters, or at least their archetypes. You know, like Johnny Star Wars suggested, is it just a case of using old characters to create new? Are they going to dip back in and take elements of Revan and merge in with other elements to create something unique?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
If nothing else, this is like mouth-watering, isn't it? To know that they're going to go back and take some of these things and breathe new life into them, because so many people were disgruntled when they just got unceremoniously jettisoned from canon.
I don't know. I feel like this kind of selective cherry picking from Legends is. I feel like they should have made a cleaner break. And I say this as somebody who does love some Thrawn, and I'm actually not. I'm not against how they've used him in Rebels. I quite like him in Rebels, but I feel like if you're going to make a clean break, stick to it.
Yeah.
And don't dip back in and say, all right, you know what, actually, we're going to take this one back. I understand why they've done it, because ultimately they've struck it all off as Legends, so they don't have to trip over anything when they're writing new stories. Particularly as, 30 years after Jedi was being covered in the books with the Zam Vong and the New Jedi Order. So, they would have had to work around that, or start later and work around that. By which point, in the Legends, if you exclude Legacy, which is the comic book series 100 years after Jedi, it was the last thing I think I'd seen about Luke was that he knew he was going to die at some point because he'd been poisoned by what ended up being, I think he ended up being Darth Krayt from Legacy. Had sort of given Luke something that meant he was going to die, some sort of dark side, kind of almost like a spike in his, like a like when people get shot and the bullet moves, and if it moves a certain place, it can kill them afterwards and stuff. That sort of thing. It had that sort of feel to it, like the
Tony Stark shrapnel in the heart thing.
Yeah, like that. That it would eventually. He knew it would eventually kill him, and he would just kind of live out the rest of his days as best he could. That sort of thing. So that was the last they kind of left it in the Legends. So obviously that doesn't give you a lot to work with when it comes to writing a new story. So I can understand why they've kicked that stuff away, but I just feel like if you're going to kick it away, you should be focusing on writing better stories rather than almost kind of subtly admitting that you need the old stories back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's also, it could be perceived as a exercise in box ticking for Legends fans, the disgruntled. It's, don't worry, we're going to give you these back. It's kind of a throwing scraps to the crowds, throwing scraps to the masses in a way, by saying we're going to wheel these characters back in for you. Won't be quite what you saw before, but there, you've got them. Pat on the head and off you go.
Yeah.
Paul, any characters? I know you're a big Shadows of the Empire fan.
Big Shadows fan, yeah. So you can do what you like with Dash. He's awesome.
Dash is canon.
He is he. I always thought there was a question mark on it.
The Outrider, I think George said in episode 4, you see a 2400 in Mos Eisley, and they asked him, is that the Outrider? He said, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, then,
That's.
then
But
it is.
did he canonise Dash, or did he just canonise the Outrider?
I think it's both. I'm not sure though.
Because the
It's
article,
one's biotic of the other.
To the usual place.
you would think, yes, please do, because I think
Yep.
that this article indicated quite strongly that Dash Rendar was still consigned to Legends at this point in time. But if it's G level canon,
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Actually.
yeah, because I'm pretty sure that that means the Outrider is canon, but that doesn't necessarily. We've seen Lando now at the controls of the Falcon, so you can't just see the Falcon and think Han.
Yeah.
But I would be keen
No.
to see that character brought back in.
Actually, it doesn't suggest that this article doesn't even say that the Outriders canon. I could have sworn I remembered seeing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is in there.
Yeah,
It is.
interesting.
It is in there. Yeah, it
There is a
absolutely
20.
you're right.
There's a YT 2400, but
Yeah.
obviously there's more than one in the galaxy.
Of course.
Same as there's more than one 1300 in Star Wars.
I remember
Just-
that comment from George. Although that's
Yeah.
not you saying that was not the first time. That seems very familiar to me. So,
Yeah.
but I think we'd all, welcome these characters back, these elements back, with open arms, and we'd get a lot out of it. And I think I find this to be very exciting. I understand what you're saying, Rob, and it's not without merit, but I do find this quite intriguing. The possibilities. And I look at Thrawn as the example, and that's why I think I have a little bit more hope for what they're planning. And they certainly seem to be planning a new hope. One might say a new hope. All right, gentlemen, I think we're about ready to. We've gone very, very long tonight. I think we're about ready to wrap this thing up. Do you?
Sure.
Anything you want to throw in before we go? I mean, next week the chances are the next episode will just be a solo trailer breakdown, if rumours are to be believed.
That could be fun.
I think it will be fun. I think it will be a lot of fun, in fact. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. 106 may well indeed be entitled 10 Solo. I hope it isn't, though, because I would have to hurt myself if I did that.
Fair.
So, all that remains to be said is thank you for listening to Talk Star Wars again this week. Don't forget you can support what we do here by becoming a member of our TSW community by heading over to Patreon and signing up there as a patron. That's at patreon.com/Talk Star Wars. You can also help us by simply leaving a 5-star review in iTunes and take advantage of our Ron Burgundy guarantee, which means whatever you write in your 5-star review, we will read as long as it's clean. So if you want to promote something like your own blog or a podcast, that's a place to do it. And if you head to talkstarwars.co.uk/reviews, you'll see the latest reviews are featured on that page. So you can also email us your questions and your comments to talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. That's talkstarwarsinfo@gmail.com. Or reach out to us on one of our many social channels like everybody did this evening from the show notes. That's on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, which I'm more active on these days. And that's to name but a few. Gentlemen, so where can people find you before episode 10 Solo? Please don't do that to yourself, Mark.
Oh.
I was just wondering what Mark was going to say next. You'll find me on the usual place, moviescorenews.com, which I have been populating a little bit more of late. I took another nap because I'm completely rubbish, but I'm back. I'm back on score. To be honest, there hasn't been a great deal. I thought the Oscar buzz would be absolutely infuriating, wild, but other than the usual suspects, which I've been chasing and following, there hasn't been a great deal on there. But yeah, you'll see me on moviescorenews.com.
Cool. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RobWadeVision, and you can find everything I do that's not Talk Star Wars shaped at emotionally14.com.
Wonderful. You can find everything I do at talkstarwars.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter at TalkStarWars. And if you head where I'm going to send you next, you will find links to Carlos at StarWarsCommonwealth.com, and you'll find our other partner shows over there also: Tumbling Saber, Generation X-Wing, Rogue Squadron, the Skyhoppers, the Nerd Room, and San Diego Sabers. Everybody's churning out top shelf quality Star Wars programming that's more than worth your time. If you download the show notes also, you can get links to all of us there. That's it for this week. Hopefully on the next episode we'll have a new trailer to talk about. It's long overdue. But thanks ever so much for joining us again this week, everybody, and we will speak to you in 7 days.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Talk Star Wars is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Find us at StarWarsCommonwealth.com alongside
The Tumbling Saber Podcast,
the Generation X-Wing Podcast,
Rogue Squadron Podcast,
the TSW Roundtable,
the Skyhoppers Podcast,
the Nerd Room Podcast,
and San Diego Sabres Radio Podcast.
Head to StarWarsCommonwealth.com. Take your first steps to a larger world.
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.